Hi everyone, happy holidays. Earlier today, the radio show I did with Derrick Jensen aired. And just so you know a background about him, he was once named one of the 50 visionaries who are changing the world, and also named Person of the Year. And you might know him for the publication Endgame, and that was 2006. He's written a slew of things besides that and been featured in a bunch of documentaries. So I was thrilled he asked me on his show, and quite nervous. It's only the second time I've done a radio show. But anyways, you can just type in prn.fm and look up the Resistance Radio Show. And I'm there, Rose Webster, December 24th. Now, I want to just remind everyone that 5 independent research teams have found that the Culex species of mosquitoes are also vectors of Zika, and they behave almost opposite to the Aedes aegypti. And recently, actually on October 10th, Dr. Duragon confirmed the presence of compartmentalized strains of Zika. A notable quote, and I have this in one of my most recent InfoBarrel articles, is that in one patient we found compartmentalized strains. The virus present in his semen was different from the virus in his urine. In all cases, the pathogen we found in the final stage of the infection was not the same as the virus that entered the patient. Now that's huge, because there is such a thing as opportunistic bacteria, which I believe Wolbachia is, and I believe that Zika is hitching a ride within the Wolbachia, taking a ride to the gonads, central nervous system, heart, optic lobe, and retina in humans and vertebrate species. Now, you might wonder, well, have you let these departments know? I've let hundreds of people know. And here's just an example. I get shut down very quickly on social media. I was blocked. The Vermont Department of Health blocked me. Or maybe someone flagged my posts and it got blocked that way. I don't know the person responsible. However, this has happened numerous times, and here's an example, just one example of many. And of course, I let Facebook know. I'm letting public health departments know that Culex are Zika vectors too, requiring different eradication strategies. And oh, the stories the Facebook moderators could tell if they could speak openly about how blocked and flagged and my posts are marked as spam by groups of people. It's really ridiculous. Now, I just want to remind you that Mosquito Mate plans to start releasing Wolbachia-infected Aedes in Kentucky and carry it along all the way up to Maine, right beside New Brunswick, Quebec, Ontario, all the way to Missouri, and then back over here to Nevada, and expand them in California. They were released in places in Florida and California for a trial run. But the FDA handed that off to the EPA, and now the EPA, half of their scientific boards have been thrown out. So this is entirely false. This was November 8th, 2017. Instead of relying on genetic engineering, Mosquito Mate infects lab-grown mosquitoes with the common bacterium Wolbachia pipientis, which affects mosquitoes but not animals or humans. That's entirely false. Survival of Wolbachia pipientis in a cell-free medium states horizontal transfer events are common. And Wolbachia can actually survive outside of a cell for up to a week, or actually longer than a week. They did test it only for a week, with no decrease in viability. And it can reinvade cells and establish stable infections at all time points. So can you imagine having trillions of these dead Wolbachia-infected Aedes lying around, and for a week, even though the mosquito is dead, the Wolbachia inside them is able to infect other species that will feed off the dead mosquitoes or eggs or larvae, because the selling point of these things is actually that Scott O'Neill said after 6 years, 90% of mosquitoes still were carrying it. So this just keeps going on and on and on, and Zika is also maternally inherited. So there's no turning back once these are released. Now, I had somebody asking me, well, you haven't really said what Wolbachia does. Well, you look up lymphatic lymphatic filariasis, river blindness, anything Wolbachia infects humans, and you'll find a slew of things. Now this is a Scientific American post from 2012, before Zika came on the scene. And here's 4 sentences that I thought were helpful. Clearly, the bacteria are more virulent when they encounter a new species. And when it was closely examined, both species contain the same number of bacteria. And I've had the argument where people say, well, it's in other insects. Yeah, well, if it's already in them and they've gone for thousands of years and they've evolved to use it as a symbiont, then yeah, it's not going to necessarily cause them a problem. But in a new species, even when there's the same number of bacteria, it's more virulent. It causes more problems. So when Wolbachia gets into a new species, the first response of the insect, and I will say vertebrate or mammal, human, is to quickly and efficiently destroy any cells that have the bacteria in them. So it's our immune response, or the whale's immune response, or the certain bird immune response that causes these die-offs. And as previously mentioned, it targets the gonads and central nervous system. That's the brain and spinal cord. So this I thought was really interesting. Nodding syndrome, since 2012, recent progress, challenges, and recommendations for future research by Cole Bunders et al. This was published November 2014, before Zika again. And these researchers, I think, were very close to keying in on something. They had said that we recently proposed that the hypothesis that black flies infected with microfilariae may also transmit an unknown pathogen, such as a neurotropic virus that is involved in the etiology of nodding syndrome. And I am hypothesizing that that would be Zika. And further along, they stated to detect such a pathogen, additional metagenomic studies of samples from human cases and controls, black flies, microfilariae, and Wolbachia should be carried out. The major pathologies associated with onchocerciasis, I'm sorry I'm not saying it right, it's also known as river blindness, are the consequence of the symbiotic bacteria Wolbachia pipientis, which is the one that their mosquito mates putting in these Aedes aegypti, and Aedes albopictus rather, carried by O. volvulus, rather than the parasite itself. And again, I apologize, my pronunciations aren't always good. Now, the weird thing is that on PubMed, the exact same study, there was no mention of a virus. It was only a novel pathogen. And the recommendation of studies of human samples, black flies, and the microfilariae, now that's the nematode worm that emits Wolbachia, they didn't even mention looking at Wolbachia, even though it's the bacteria itself that is causing the immune system to overreact and damage its own cells and so on. So I find PubMed removes abstracts, things go missing, things are behind paywalls, so it's disturbing. Now, I want to let you know again, I think I did in another post, is that the EPA is looking to do a nationwide release of Wolbachia-infected Aedes. So this is disturbing. There's no commenting available on any of these. Even Scott O'Neill's own videos for Eliminate Dengue, I can't comment on them. There's no commenting. You know, people can't say anything. Again, in the radio interview, I got to this point where I was saying sperm counts have declined by more than half for Western men. And here's a few snippets of that post, and that was, in the summertime, 2017. Sperm counts decreased by almost 60% among men from North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. And Dr. Levine said, even though we did not study the causes, it clearly is not genetic. Must be a change in the modern lifestyle and the environment we live in. Well, there's a lot of people I know that are living healthy lifestyles, so, I don't think we can always attribute it to that. I think we should start looking at the environment, which would be Wolbachia that's now in our environment for over 7 years in various places. So I want to remind you of where these releases are. In red is eliminate dengue. The yellow, it's been going on in Southeast Asia for a long time. And the purple are the EPA places. And as you see, I don't know if these whales are even going to have a chance given that their migration routes along that area. So I want to remind you of that. And to leave it on a really positive note, Citizen News messaged me and asked, do you know if it can be transmitted without a mosquito vector? And I reminded them of the ignored 2015 paper by Chendong et al. It states, Wolbachia can infect mammalian cells, even human cells in vitro. Horizontal transmission in insects and among helminths occur by a cell-to-cell invasion, predation, and cannibalism, among other possibilities, establishing the potential for horizontal transfer to animals and humans as well. Hence, Wolbachia species should be further evaluated as causes of human infection. And I gave them that and some more information. So I want to let you know that I will leave a link to the podcast, and you can listen to it anytime you like. And I want to wish you all happy holidays and be safe and healthy and happy, and we'll keep going. Thanks so much.